Morning, gang. Hello, hello. Everybody staying safe? Let me just try and adjust my my comments here so that I can see who's with me. Bear with me. Well, that didn't work. All right. Well, we already have a quorum, so I'm having difficulty seeing you. There we go. Terry Reardon from Tampa. Peter Cipriano. Hi, Peter. How are you? Todd Sheffield, Hempfield Township in Lancaster County. Jane O'Neill is with us. Carrie Moore. Penn Argel. And I said it right, didn't I, Carrie? Kathy Peebles Finney, Blacksburg, Virginia. Edward Toohey from Chicago. TC, look at all the people who were here before you, TC. By the way, TC owes me $1 because those of you who are radio listeners, and I hope that's a lot of you, the bridal store below the studio, it opened yesterday. Remember, I had through June 16 and she had June 17 until infinity. So things are springing back to life. Did you see the provocative question that I posted at the bottom of this Facebook Live? Should the New York Times publish Senator Tom Cotton's essay in the Sunday print edition? Well, this is the essay, and the answer is they're not doing it. I'm asking, should they? And the way that I would frame this, and in fact, TC, put the link, if you would, of Cotton's essay right into this Facebook Live. The issue is not, do you agree with Senator Tom Cotton, the Republican of Arkansas? It's not in my assessment, it's not a function of do you agree with him. It's whether the New York Times should be publishing his work. It's become extremely controversial. It's a little bit unclear to me as to how this got in the New York Times. And I say that because in Rich Lowry's National Review piece, which Tom Cotton tweeted and said, here's the backstory. Lowry says that the Cotton people pitched the New York Times. But the Daily Beast today, in talking about what went on in the Times newsroom yesterday, talks about how the Times acknowledged having invited Senator Cotton to write for them, and he'd written for them before. Now, those of you who are out of the loop on this, you're wondering, well, what's the controversy? I guess, among other things, it's that paragraph, which says the following. Some elites have excused this orgy of violence in the spirit of radical chic, calling it an understandable response to the wrongful death of George Floyd. Those excuses are built on a revolting moral equivalence of rioters and looters to peaceful, law-abiding protesters. A majority who seek to protest peacefully shouldn't be confused with bands of miscreants. The fact that the Times published the words of Cotton this particular week has caused blowback from outside and inside the New York Times, where a number of Times employees, 800 by last count, had signed a letter condemning giving Cotton this platform. And many of them said that by publishing this work, African American employees of the New York Times have been put in physical jeopardy. I bring this up at the outset, both of this conversation, and I will do so when I begin my CNN program in 90 minutes, because I think free speech is under fire. And there have been a number of incidents. You know, we're trying, I'll say it this way, some of us are trying to have a very important conversation about race relations in America. And others among us, they would rather foment dissent, and they don't want there to be a conversation and a healing. Frankly, because many of them, I'm not referring to the Times or its employees, I'm thinking of those partisans at the ends of the extreme who literally, go to the bank on the fact that we can't get along and get our act together. As the rest of us are trying to engage, establishing the rules, the parameters of that conversation is proving to be difficult. And I refer to examples like whether the New York Times should publish the work of a United States senator. By the way, my answer is yes. In the same way that I say to my CNN colleagues here, if you have any member of the United States Senate I'm inclined to put them on the air, regardless of the news cycle. Such is the prominence and the stature that I ascribe to those 100 people. So that's where I come from. Unless it were hate speech, and it's not, then I would say they should publish it. But you think about some of the things that have gone on this week. You know, Drew Brees saying that, I have the literal quotes in front of me, but Drew Brees talking about how kneeling during the national anthem disrespects the flag, and then gets this immediate blowback, among others, Malcolm Jenkins, who says, "We're done asking, Drew, and people who share your sentiments, who express those and push them throughout the world, the airwaves, are the problem. And it's unfortunate because I considered you a friend. I looked up to you. In the end, sometimes you should just shut the F up." Ellen DeGeneres says, "Like so many of you, I'm angry and I'm sad. People of color in this country have faced injustice for far too long. For things to change, things must change. We must commit ourselves to this change with conviction and love." Blowback. She had to issue a tearful apology. Why? Because some found objectionable her use of the words people of color, notwithstanding the fact that President Obama, within 24 hours, used the same word choice. Granted, he's black, she's not. But, you know, Ellen DeGeneres having to issue a tearful apology after that. I could cite, and I don't have time when I do my commentary on CNN, but I could cite 10 examples of this where people are speaking and others say, hey, you're not getting it right, and then they get shut down. And what stands out in my mind against that backdrop of squelching speech is Emmanuel Acho. Emmanuel Acho is the former NFLer. If you haven't seen this video, this 9-minute long video, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man, you got to do it. He was on my radio program this week, and I think he has the right idea, which is to address these subjects head on with candid and open dialogue. Subjects like, why is it inappropriate for any white person to use the N-word, but acceptable in some circumstances for African Americans to use the N-word? That's where I'm going. In the opening of my program today, I want to address the subject of having this discourse. And in the end, if things go according to plan, I will conclude my thoughts by saying, we've got to keep talking. When the speaker errs, the listener should correct nicely. When the correction comes, the reply should be thoughtful. We not only need to have that form of constructive dialogue, we must have it. A house divided against itself cannot stand. I know, sounds highfalutin and lofty, but that's where I'm coming from. I'm very, very concerned that there's not going to be the necessary conversation continuing in this country when we get beyond this protest phase of what's transpiring in response to George Floyd's killing. Okay? So that's where I am. Now, I buried the lead. My guest today, after I deliver an opening commentary on these subjects, Sir Charles Barkley. Nobody I would rather speak to than Sir Charles on subjects like this. So I'm looking forward to having him on the program today. Also on the program today, this is kind of funny. At dinner the other night, and I mentioned this on radio, but two of our sons' phones started blowing up because Meek Mill had just put on Instagram a piece of an interview that I did with him 18 months ago. I had no idea why, and I didn't have any idea as I went to bed that night. And then yesterday, and if you were listening on radio, we figured this out, in real time. Yesterday, Meek Mill dropped a new song, and it's a very provocative song called "Other Side of America." And the close of Meek Mill's new song is him showing. I'm going to play this on CNN today. Him showing a piece of an interview that I did with him on CNN, where essentially I'm asking him about his past and the charge that he had raised a gun, pointed a weapon at law enforcement, which he denies and says, essentially, do you think I'd still be alive if that were true. But then on talking about why he carries a gun, Meek Mill describes, here, I'll actually tell you what he said to me. At the end of the song, in the lyrics, I've always wanted to be in liner notes. I guess I finally got my wish. But Meek Mill says this: I grew up in America in a ruthless neighborhood where we are not protected by police. We grew up in ruthless environments. We grew up around murder. You see murder, you see 7 people die a week. I think you would probably carry a gun yourself. Would you? And then he stopped. You know, I'm not used to having the tables turned on me in an interview where someone that I'm interviewing now says, well, I want to ask you a question, but he did. And he caught me totally cold and got an honest answer from me where I said, yeah, I probably would. And what ran through my mind that day when Meek asked me that question was, well, I've had guns in suburbia. So how honest would it be if I said, oh no, Meek, if I were living in your environment, I'd never carry a weapon? That wouldn't be the case. So, got to talk about that, and I will do so. There's a Philly theme here. It just occurred to me because Sir Charles, of course, we regard as a Philly guy, and Meek is a Philly guy. I had an interesting experience this week meeting a grocer named Jeff Brown. Jeff Brown owns 7 ShopRite supermarkets in Philadelphia, all in the inner city, all serving a minority population. 2 of them were looted. 2 of them were looted this past week, Sunday into Monday. 15 straight hours, and the cops wouldn't come or couldn't come. Captured on video that you will see, 2 guys back a pickup truck through the front door of his store. 20 people come in. There are 10 employees in the store holding down the fort, now scared to death. They go up on the roof. They can't get the police to come. You know what they did? I'd have done the same thing. They called the fire department. They said the building's on fire. And the fire department came out, the looters ran, and they were rescued. It's such a sad story because the people victimized by this looting are members of that community because the store closed. Now, the good news is the store is reopening. But the store was knocked out for a week, and here's a guy, Jeff Brown, white guy, the grocer, who employs 95% folks of color, many of whom have been on the wrong side of the law and are looking for a second chance, and he gives it to them. It's more than just a grocery store because it's a pharmacy. It's a credit union. Think of it as a bank. There's a social worker who works inside the store. It's like a main street. You know, the sort of things that maybe you, I know I do, take for granted. I mean, do you worry about your access to groceries or a pharmacy? Hell no. Or a bank? But the folks who live in these neighborhoods, they do. So he services them. And of all stores to get looted, it's just a terrible, terrible tragedy. But I went and visited him in the store to get a first-hand look and understand this. And you'll see that interview today. And then finally, check out these headlines. Look at these headlines. ABC and the Washington Post are polling partners. That's an important part of the story. ABC and the Washington Post are polling partners. So they do a poll together, and the Washington Post writes it up, and here's the headline. 7 in 10 Americans would likely get a coronavirus vaccine. 7 in 10 Americans would likely get a vaccine. ABC writes their headline, 27% unlikely to be vaccinated against coronavirus. In other words, it's like total glass half empty, glass half full. By the way, which one of these headlines would you have written? Because I have a clear answer. If I were writing the headline on the Washington Post ABC News survey that said, I'll take a liberty here, a third We have all this conversation in the country. When are we going to have a vaccine? Dr. Fauci, when are we going to have a vaccine? When's the vaccine coming? Blah, 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 blah. You know, the president, warp speed, blah, 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 blah. I mean, to me, this is the holy crap headline. Holy crap, a third taking a liberty, 27%. How about this? Nearly a third aren't going to get it? Wow, what's up with that? So I want to talk about that today. I mean, our third are not going to get it. If a third don't get it, and we have elderly Americans and people with vulnerabilities because they're immunosuppressed, they've got something going on in them already, then those 1/3 are going to continue to jeopardize those who are most vulnerable, right? So I want to discuss that a little bit today. I'll tell you something interesting. So you wonder, well, who are these people who aren't going to get it? And it does break along ideological and political grounds. Interestingly, like 45 or 46% of Republican women say, I'm not getting it. And now, I solicited telephone calls from folks in that category, folks who will not get a COVID-19 vaccine. And they were not anti-vaxxers. They were not like Area 51 people. Many of them worked in healthcare, and many of them said, look, this thing is being rushed. You know, I've had experience with a vaccine. They told me their history, or they just feel like there is such a rush to get a vaccine before the election that they are nervous about it, which I understand. And my point is, I hope that the healthcare system is ready to address the fears that people will have. So, anyway, that's my show today. It should be a really good program. Interestingly, it's a lot of commentary, which I like, on really provocative subjects. Like, you know, here's the New York Times taking the work of a very conservative Republican in the United States Senate. Tremendous blowback. Nobody is saying that I've read that he was factually incorrect. It's all about opinion. But, you know, that's what I think that their op-ed page is for, is to print things that give people an opportunity to think differently. But the reaction to it, I have found to be representative of the closing out of a lot of conversation this week, just when we need it the most. I'm not talking hate speech. I'm not talking defamation. If somebody speaks in a defamatory manner or with hate, screw them. You don't have to give them a platform, and you shouldn't. But beyond that, we got to keep talking. All right, I need to get to work, gang. Did you look at my Instagram today? On my Instagram page, I took this beautiful. I'll tell you a quick sad story. I pulled up today as I was driving into the studio to Philadelphia City Hall. When I was a block away, there was nobody around. Very early morning, beautiful morning in Philly. I was stopped at a red light. I got out of my car and I held up my phone and I took a picture of City Hall. I love the building. Architecturally, it's a gem. It's a gem. So now, those of you who know the layout of Center City, I drove down 15th Street and I came upon the Apron. I looked off to my left to the MSB building where the Rizzo statue was just removed. And as I came further up to City Hall, I looked to my left on the north face of City Hall. It's all National Guardsmen, all military trucks and men, presumably women as well, in combat fatigues. Because today is expected to be an enormous day of protest around the country. And that's not the sad part. The sad part to me, it's a great part of being an American. It's sad to me to see that such a military presence is deemed necessary. So I hope that today is a safe day. I hope the weekend's a safe weekend. I wish you all good things. Go vote on my survey question at smirconish.com. This is going to be a great program today at 9 a.m., and I hope you'll be there to watch it. An hour and 10 minutes from now, I will see you on CNN. Have a great, safe day. See ya.